Everyone, welcome to the October 3rd, 2024 Parking, Traffic, and Safety meeting. Would you please take the roll?
Mary Lou McElwain.
Here.
Mark Syracuse. Here. Erica Wygonick.
Here.
Deputy Police Chief Mike Maloney. Fire Chief Bill McQuillan. Public Works Director Peter Rice.
Here.
Stephanie Casella, Planning Department.
Here.
Dave Allen via Zoom.
Here.
And Chairman Andrew Bagley.
Here. Thank you. And can we see the financial report? We are 16.67% of the way through the year with 21% revenue. Are there any questions?
Motion to approve?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Oh, we have to do roll call votes because Dave's on Zoom. I guess that goes to you, Tyler.
Yep. Mary Lou.
Here.
Yes.
What am I saying?
Yes.
Yes.
Mark Syracuse.
Yes.
Erica
Repeat.
Wygonick.
Yes.
Peter Rice.
Yes.
Stephanie Casella.
Yes.
Dave Allen.
Yes.
Chairman Bagley.
Yes. Okay. And now we're going to open it up for public comment. This will be the only chance that you have to speak during the meeting. We have a lot of people here. Is everybody planning to speak? If you're planning to speak, just raise your hands real quick. Okay, only 3. Okay, so I'm not going to limit the time. But keep the 3 minutes in your heart, I guess. And just come up to one of the microphones, state your name and address, and what you're here to speak on.
Hi, my name is Mark Adamy, 350 Broad Street. So I'm here to talk about the stretch of Broad Street between South and Jones Avenue, which is lined with around 45 homes and no businesses. I think the remaining stretch of Broad, which would go from South to Merrimack Street, in my opinion, doesn't have the same issues I'm going to speak about, but I can't say that for certain. I don't live there. There are a lot of parked cars on Broad Street, including many cars from residents that don't live on the street, and they're parked there sometimes for extended periods of time, which makes our road very tight, especially when cars are speeding. This is more concerning, especially since there seem to be more kids living on the street these days. I've been there about 30 years now. In my opinion, the through traffic volume with speeds in excess of the posted 20 miles an hour are a result of a few things. First and probably foremost, it's used as a cutoff to avoid the traffic light at the intersection of South Miller and Sagamore, and this generates through traffic in both directions. Second, there's through traffic going to the nursing home and the Elks Club up on Jones Avenue. And then also, there's a slight hill when you're going from Jones to South Street that allows cars to speed up naturally on the hill. While there is a posted no trucks and 20-mile-an-hour speed limit sign, that's only posted when you're entering from South Street. If you're entering from the Jones Avenue sign, there's no posted speed limit or no through truck or no truck signs. There's also no through traffic signs. I don't know if that stretch of road is designated as no through traffic, but that would be a recommendation. We then have ambulances going to and from the nursing home on Jones Avenue, and they opt to speed up our stretch of Broad instead of going around 100 feet or so to get to that Sagamore Avenue, even though the posted speed limits on Sagamore are 50% higher than they are on Broad. Sagamore's 30, we're 20. And Sagamore's designed, I think, for through traffic. It's got a yellow line, white stripes, but the ambulances choose to speed up our street instead of going that extra 100 feet or so. So I'm sure you all have a list of tactics that can be used to mitigate speeds and traffic volume through residential streets. I would ask that you consider a few of them. First, paint a crosswalk on the southern side of South and Broad. There is a sidewalk on that stretch of South Street when you come down that little hill, and kids are walking to Little Harbor School every day, and there's no crosswalk painted on that intersection in that direction. Second, it'd be great if you could repaint the crosswalk at the top of Broad at Jones Avenue. It's there, but it's very faded, and there's been some patchwork construction in the street, so it for all intent and purposes, it doesn't exist. It'd be great if we could post a speed limit and no truck signs when entering Broad from Jones Avenue. You could consider placing a stop sign at the intersection of Broad and Gray Lane to slow down traffic. That was done a number of years ago on the other end of Broad Street to help mitigate the speed of traffic. Install permanent electronic speed signs if you find those effective. We could designate and post no through traffic signs on both ends of the street, because this is a residential street and people are using it explicitly as a cutoff. And then last, and this in my opinion is probably the biggest reason people are using our street as a cutoff, look at ways to optimize the traffic light at that South Miller and Sagamore intersection to allow more traffic to flow through when driving east on South Street. The current setup prioritizes traffic flowing west, and in my opinion is the biggest contributor to the challenges we're talking about today.
Great. Thank you, Mark.
Hello, my name is Brent Schmidt, and I'm here to talk about the proposal to take away parking on the corner of Middle and Cass Street. I've lived on that.
address?
Excuse me?
What's your address?
300 Cass Street. I've lived on this corner for almost 20 years, so I'm an actual resident of this location as opposed to people who complain about it who don't actually live there. So what does the data say? When we had the on-site meeting last week, the Portsmouth Police Department confirmed that this is not a problem intersection at the site visit. So that alone, in my opinion, should end this discussion. I'm not even sure why we're talking about this, but I'll continue. This seems like a solution that's looking for a problem. The public notice I received stated that all of this rigmarole is due to a resident, that is singular, complaint. One resident complaining. So one whiner caused all of this discussion. Doesn't make any sense. This is an affordable housing issue. There are 40-plus apartments within a 2-minute walk of this area. The city has already stolen 50% of the parking on this part of Middle Street because of the boondoggle bike path to nowhere. Every time the city takes away parking, it makes it less affordable to live in this area. So if you want to make everything more expensive, take this parking away. Unintended consequences. I have two pictures for you to see here. The first is, pass these around. I'll wait until you get those.
They're all stapled.
Yeah, there are
Two
two
pages.
pictures to reference.
2 pages.
Yeah, 2 pages. So you take away the parking, just like what happened with the bike path, it's going to push more cars to Cass Street. So the first picture there, you see how narrow it is, and the second picture, you see when a car actually tries to go through that. 18-wheelers go down this street on a regular basis going to Hannaford's. My car that's been pushed to park there because of the bike path to nowhere has been hit 4 times, parked, 4 times, parked because of the cars coming down the street. My wife's car has been hit twice. So our cars alone, 6 times. It's $2,000 just in insurance deductibles because cars are being pushed to Cass Street. Second part, allowing people, if you take away the parking spot that's in front of the house on Middle Street, you're going to allow people to swerve around people who are taking a left turn on Park Street and cause more accidents. The whole thing is just, it makes no sense. I understand people can complain, but are we really talking about one person whining about this? And there's no issue. So if you want more affordable housing and to make this corner more safe with fewer accidents, you must reject this proposal to take more parking away from us. Thank you.
You, Brett?
Somebody that has a question, I think, on the screen.
Oh, Hannah, we'll get to you after we get to the speakers of the room.
Hello, James Robinson, 30 Kate Street. So a couple items here, and I think I've already communicated directly with Eric and a couple of other folks via email. So we're basically down in the creek, West End, over by West End Yards. There's a couple things that I wanted to speak to. One is we've modified the Bartlett Kate Street crosswalk a handful of times. I think at this point, the crosswalk generally functions fine. I think the missing link there is that for the vehicles that are coming off of Islington Street to go under the train overpass, there's no indication for those vehicles that somebody's in the crosswalk. If you're on the Ricci Lumber side of that, you're basically behind the stone that goes up to support the train overpass. So when you press that button, you're basically hidden from view there. It does light up the two pieces that are on that side of the underpass, the train overpass, but there needs to still be a connection over by Papa Wheelies as you're coming onto the beginning of Bartlett Street to indicate to the vehicles coming that way. The other piece of that in general, which will lead to my other item, is as we've redirected the traffic going through basically the Creek neighborhood to all the commercial and trucking traffic to go out to the bypass, that means the volume of vehicles coming through there, whether that's just regular vehicles or tractor trailers and box trucks, they're going through that way as well. So you've increased the volume coming through that intersection. The other piece of this, just more generally, is the overall traffic coming through that area, and there's really nothing to indicate what the speed limit is coming that way. If you come in off of the bypass, go by where the U-Haul is as you're heading up Hodgdon Way, there is a speed limit sign. I believe posted speed limit's what, 20? 25. There needs to be a speed limit sign coming in the other direction to indicate what the speed limit is through that area, because it's nothing telling you if you're coming down towards the bypass what the speed limit is in that area. The other thing that might be beneficial is a blind drive sign when you're coming from the bypass, so you're coming up Hodgdon Way before Kate Street turns to go to Bartlett. The 23 townhouses in the second phase of development adjacent to where I live, and then the 31 townhouses behind it. Our 31 has an exit that's further up where you can see in both directions. The entrance and exit for West End Yards you can also see in both directions. When you're coming out from where West End Place is, you can't see to the left of you because that development basically goes out to about where the sidewalk is. So you can't see what's coming around that, so there should be an indication to vehicles coming up Hodgdon onto Kate Street that there is a driveway there that people could be exiting or entering into. There's some additional data here, Kevin, if you want to just hand out the copies. Oh, I have the copies, yeah. Just speaking to these particular things, and which I'll hand around to folks, but that was basically it.
Thank you.
Great, thank you, James.
Thanks.
Just come up to the microphone, state your name and address, please.
Hi, my name's Jessica Sears. I live at 332 Broad Street. I don't like public speaking, so just bear with me. But this is really important to me, so I definitely wanted to come and say something. When we got the letter from Mark, I thought, oh, this is fantastic. We are on Broad with the Broad Street address, but we're actually on the corner of Broad and South. And a month or so before, I had a chance to talk to someone else about just different families in the area and the speed and the traffic on Broad and the speed and traffic just in that area in general too. But for Broad specifically, a little bit about our background. We are residents here, but very new. We just moved in June, and we had bought the house back in February. Did one of the craziest things I ever thought was we bought sight unseen, but we were coming from very far away, Iowa City, and we are so happy to be here. At this point, I've lived like quite a bit all over the country, my husband as well, from LA to Iowa to Ohio to Georgia to DC. He grew up in Connecticut originally, and so happy to be back in New England. Some of the things that we really prioritized before coming here was having an area that could be walkable. A small town is where we came from, with like really great small town vibes, and walk to schools, walk to everything that we need. Love that. Did a lot of research on the computer, and one of the big things I looked at before we bought and settled was speed limits, because I felt confident that if there's a speed limit posted, then that was the speed limit. But being here, it's not the speed limit that people drive, even though it is what is posted. I have 2 young children. We've put in a fence, we've put in trees, we've done what we can on our end from like a property owner. We've always walked to school. We love it, but I do feel nervous. There's areas where the sidewalk is so narrow too, and cars just whiz by. Before I was home with my kiddos, I was a pediatric ICU nurse, and I firsthand took care of kids after cars. And that's like something no one would ever want. So it really, I think, comes down to a safety issue. And I think it's our responsibility as a community to take care of each other, and especially our children. And I think a great way to do it would be to protect them. So that's my big drive home points. My son is at a field trip, but luckily my husband could take him this morning. Otherwise, he was going to be here too, because I thought that would be nice for him to help contribute. But my kids love playing in the front yard and the side yard. We're used to like a lot of land, and I love the idea of kids being outside and outdoors. And but you know, in Portsmouth, the parcels are small, so we want to utilize every bit we can, including like our front yard there on Broad. I also don't know this, but I have a feeling that I know that these pathways can be for emergency vehicles or whatnot, but I think if the traffic is slower, it would actually help the emergency vehicles. Like if people were going the speed limits they were supposed to, then in these times, the emergency situations could be addressed quicker. And when you have the speed tables that are wide enough, the emergency vehicles can go over them. It's all the other ones, like the semi-trucks and the cars. And it's so beautiful here. They should slow down and look out the window anyways.
Thank you, Jessica, and welcome to Portsmouth.
Morning, nice to see some of you again. Keep coming to meetings. My name's Brian. Brian Rayte. I live at 457 Broad Street, and also soon to be 475 Broad Street. So just a small reiteration of some of the things that Mark said. My wife and I have been in Portsmouth now 22 years. I've lived well over half a dozen different places and locations here in Portsmouth. Most of them, ironically, are cut-throughs. All the streets I've lived on, for the most part, are cut-throughs, although some of them are intended, such as Middle Road and Islington. But I've lived on Cabot. I've lived on McDonough. I've lived on Union, Wybird, Willard, and now Broad. Ironically, I just moved from the widest street in Portsmouth to the other widest street in Portsmouth. So I moved from Willard Avenue to Broad Street. Everything that Mark said about Broad Street, as well as his suggestions, are 100% true. I have never seen more cut-through traffic than I see in Broad Street, and it is a
It is a conglomeration of a lot of things. It is the old age home. It is the new city-supported junkyard. It is the people avoiding the lights. Westbound is definitely better than eastbound. Something else that's really significant is the width of the street, and specifically the topography. It's not lost on any of us that live on Broad Street that you just put a new digital speed sign on South Street, which, by the way, they do work exceedingly well, because even it is very hard to speed in a small town with children when you have something flashing in your face reminding you that you are being out of line. But secondly, part of the reason that you did that is because of the steep grade coming down South Street towards Sagamore, and everybody in this town knows the amount of speed there is. I don't think I've ever seen a car going at speed down. There's always a car going at speed up, and usually speeding up, which is another aspect of Broad Street, is that, to Mark's point, and I live directly at the crest, so I am halfway on Broad Street on the Sagamore side, and I'm right at the point where, if you're coming up Broad Street, it just starts to crest and flatten out then as you go to Jones. So you get people coming down South Street. The sidewalk, because South Street dips so significantly towards the light, the sidewalk and where the crosswalk that we're asking to be repainted, the sidewalk does not come to a 90, it cuts in, both for drainage and to make it easier to bear right onto Broad Street. The speed, the inclination, the topography is set up to come down at speed and bear right. And so people kind of burn in there. Anyone that knows Broad Street then hits the gas to go up to my house to where it crests, and by the time they're at my house, they're 10 miles an hour faster than they were before my house. Same thing happens on the other side that Mark was saying, is that they're already starting down from the Jones Ave side, which is pretty nice and straight and flat, and again, exceedingly wide, and then they hit my driveway and they go another 10 miles an hour faster because now they're dropping. So it really is a conglomeration of quite a few items. I simply wanted to say and call out that I have lived in all of these places and all of these cut-throughs. Union's a major cut-through, Wybird's a major cut-through, Cabot for sure. But in all of those places, I haven't seen the amount of progression and congestion that I see here. And I would very much compare the amount of traffic to somewhere like Aldridge, that has had speed bumps and all sorts of things over the years. I'd like to find out who is championing Aldridge Street. There are no speeders on Aldridge Street anymore. It's impossible. That said, we're not I don't think anyone in this room is necessarily asking for 6 speed bumps. I think what it needs is that side of town just needs a little bit of extra love. The signage and the painting is really, really important, and ironically, it's not unlike what I've heard people talking about today with Cass and the new cut over to West End Yards. There's just new traffic patterns here, and Portsmouth is not the town of 23,000 people it was when I first moved here. It's growing pretty quickly. So thank you all very much for your time this morning and attention.
Thank you, Brian. And then I think we have one more.
Hey everyone, Matthew Grocke, 359 Broad Street. My points will not be as eloquent as those before me, but I too have lived on Broad Street for over 20 years, about 22 years now. And I do almost look at this as 2 separate issues, the issue of the speeding on the street and then the intersection between South and Broad. I have, like I said, I've lived there for a long time. Jess, I've seen your kids playing in the yard. It's nice to meet you, by the way. Interesting circumstance. But what's really upsetting for me is to be a witness and a first responder to dozens of accidents that have occurred at that intersection. Or in one point when a gentleman came knocking on my door because he got out of his car in front of my house, which is the widest part of Broad Street, which is already a wide street. And you could classify this as new Broad Street versus old Broad Street. I think technically in the city plan, that's how it's listed. But the gentleman simply got out of his car. Someone came from the old age home and just blew his car door off. Didn't hit him, but like enough to like blew his door off. And so it's unnerving. It's unnerving when you sit, and when I sit on my porch and I just hear the screech, and I'm like, oh, nope, that's an accident at South and Sagamore, or, oh no, here we go again, one between South and Broad. And it's just, I think, I don't want to say an easy solve, but that intersection, as far as mitigating speed, traffic patterns and families are constantly growing and evolving. 2 daughters that have born and raised in that area, thankfully, have not had an issue. But this very much is a community where we want to have folks who are playing in their yards and for them to feel safe. And I am, it's time and time again, watching car accidents on not only the street, but then coming up onto the curb, basically just trying to beat a light or trying to, get down through to South on their way into town is a continuing issue. So I would just strongly advocate for the town to do something to mitigate that safety concern.
Great. Thank you, Matthew. And I believe we have Hannah online. We did that one. Yes.
Hi, can you hear me?
We can hear you, Hannah.
Thank you, members of the committee, and giving this opportunity on Zoom to speak. I'm speaking about the Middle Street and Cass area. I live directly across Cass Street on Middle Street. I did want to mention I really appreciate the committee for notifying us about this, because in the past us residents and businesses have been pretty blindsided with a lot of the happenings that were related to the bike lane construction. This is the first opportunity that I've actually received a notice on my car or at home, so I greatly appreciate that and the opportunity to speak before changes are made. That said, we have had about 20 to 25 spaces on both sides of the road taken away, cut back to 10. There was a point that we had 4 spaces, so that was just cruel. There were a lot of people getting hit on Cass Street or the other side streets that really can't accommodate parking. We also, so fortunately we have those 10 spaces back, but I do want to mention that I exclusively park on Middle Street. I park right on the east of the intersection at the first utility pole. And I do that just to give a little bit of sight distance, and so that I also don't get hit from people taking kind of fastest turns. But I do appreciate that the speed limit has been changed from 30 to 25 miles per hour. I have noticed a change. I'm normally going behind somebody these days that's 20 miles per hour, so I don't really see the speeds as high as they used to be. I noticed that forgot to mention, I am a professional engineer. Specializing in traffic and transportation engineering. I've been practicing for about 15 years. So I did want to bring up the sight distance that was used. That was based on 30 miles per hour. I understand with the design speed, it's pretty much at the discretion of the engineer. As an engineer the past 10, 15 years, I've pretty much just been using the posted speed and just kind of common practice to use that posted speed as the speed that you're basing the sight distance on. So right now you guys have it at 200 feet. I would propose re-investigating this at maybe 155 miles per hour, and also looking at the vertex or the decision point at a kind of more appropriate location. I know that you guys, it appears that you set it off 14.5 feet from the bike lane. Maybe just consider how conservative all of the actual recommendations are, and do it from just the vehicular travel lane. People normally just pull right up to the bike lane, and it's about 6 feet from the driver's eye where they make these decisions. And I haven't heard any honking since all the parking has been restored to the curb. I haven't noticed any collisions as far as I know. I am quite surprised that this whole decision about parking is just based on one person's complaint. So I hope you'll reconsider the calculations. We can't really afford to lose the parking here. We have a business, a chocolate business, that on weekends they just take up so much parking. A lot of us are left to our own devices, having to walk further than we really need to get to our home. We've already made a lot of sacrifices with this parking, and it's concerning that this is an ongoing issue. Our residents fighting for parking. So I hope you'll consider maybe just removing one parking space up to that utility pole. I would be okay with that. Like, we still are going to struggle, but I just think the 3 parking spaces to the east is a little excessive, and perfect is the enemy of good. So I hope you'll reconsider.
Okay, thank you, Hannah.
Thank
Is there
you.
anybody else on Zoom? No. Okay. With that, I'll close the public comment. And new business, item A, Broad Street, concerns regarding traffic speeds and volumes by resident. And the sample motion is to refer to staff for evaluation and report back at future meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? I'll just add that for the people here that may not be aware, this is what we typically do. It'll get referred to staff, and then they'll come back, and if there's any recommendations, they'll be made, and they'll be posted on a future agenda. All those in, we've got to do a roll call vote, please.
Mary Lou McElwain. Mark Siracusa.
Yes.
Erica Wagonik.
Yes.
Public Works Director Peter Rice.
Yes.
Stephanie Casella.
Yes.
Dave Allen.
Yes.
Chairman Bagley.
Yes. Okay, Bartlett Street, Kate Street, Hodgson Way, pedestrian and vehicle concerns by residents. Sample motion, move to refer to staff for evaluation, report back at future meeting.
So moved.
Second.
And can we have another, any discussion? Can we have another roll call vote, please?
Mary Lou McElwain.
Yes.
Mark Siracusa.
Yes.
Erica Wagonik.
Yes.
Director Peter Rice.
Yes.
Stephanie Casella.
Yes.
Dave Allen.
Yes.
Chairman Bagley.
Yes. And item C, Union Street, request to change traffic flow to one-way between State Street and Austin Street by residents. Sample motion, move to refer to staff for evaluation, report back at future meeting.
So moved.
Second.
You're
Do you have a
going to be
question
busy.
on this one?
Yeah, I mean, what's the background here? Where did this come from?
Yes, we're currently doing construction on this section of Union Street, and it was brought up, we are making changes to the curb line out there, narrowing it a little bit, and the residents were concerned that they would be difficult to get through with the parking on the street, and they had idea of possibly making this a one-way street, continuing the one-way that comes in from Islington. So we did get a petition from about half the residents of that block, and so I put it on the agenda so the committee can consider the request.
Thanks.
Okay. Could you take a roll call vote, please?
Mary Lou McElwain.
Yes.
Mark Siracusa.
Yes.
Erica Wagonik.
Yes.
Director Peter Rice.
Yes.
Stephanie Casella.
Yes.
Planning Department. Dave Allen.
Yes.
Chairman Bagley.
Yes. Okay, old business, Middle Street, request to remove parking at intersection with gas by resident. And this sample motion is move to prohibit parking to improve sightlines at intersection.
I'll move for discussion.
Second.
Anybody want to go first?
Well, I'd like Eric to speak to,
Sure.
the proposed change.
Okay. So the diagram that was shown in the packet is, and I think this is also what Hannah was referring to, is how the sight lines are measured. And it was measured 14 and a half feet back. The vertex, the driver's eye height is 14 and a half feet back from the edge of the bicycle lane. And using 30-mile-an-hour speeds, because even though the roadway is posted at 25 miles an hour, repeated speed studies have shown that the 85th percentile
It's
speeds.
25, though.
It's posted at 25.
You can't base it
Oh,
on.
sorry, there's no feedback. Sorry. Go ahead, Eric.
But the actual 85th percentile speeds of drivers on Middle Street is 30 miles an hour. It is common, I've had a lot of experience doing sightline issues in private development sectors before this job. Had to go to court to litigate these issues. When you're coming down to safety, you don't look at this posted speed limit, you look at the actual speeds that drivers are driving, because that's how you make sure that you're providing a safe sightline for drivers. So that's why it chose 30 miles an hour as because that's actually what drivers are driving at. So using that and the 14 and a half feet from the bike lane and looking out 200 feet for 30 miles an hour is where I come up with another 60 feet of parking that would need to be removed to provide that 200-foot sight line. Now, Hannah does have a good point that drivers, they stop right at the edge of the bike lane. You could really put this vertex point another 6 feet forward. The way the 14 and a half feet is determined is that's typically drivers will stop 6.5 feet from their front bumper will be 6.5 feet from the edge of the travel lane. And then the driver's eye from the bumper is another 8 feet. That gives you the 14.5 feet. Realistically, we can bring that vertex point up to the edge of the travel lane rather than the bike lane, as I did here. And when you do that, still keeping the 30 miles an hour, because that's what the actual speeds are on the street, then it does reduce the amount of parking that we would need to remove down to another, I think that's 20, I have another diagram here that I've done separately. That is this one here. So this is bringing the vertex point based off the travel lane rather than the bike lane, going out 200 feet for 30 miles an hour. Then you only need to restrict the parking for another 35 feet from where it is now. So it would be back to this point. So it would be 2 spaces here, the one in front of the utility pole and the one behind it. So it would be reducing it by 2 spaces here. On the other side of Cass Street, you would not have to remove any parking at all. That would not be changed. So this is based on the 30-mile-an-hour speeds and moving that vertex point up to the travel lane rather than the bike lane. Then you could reduce it to 35 feet. But I feel strongly that if you want to meet the minimum requirements as per federal standards, then you would use the 30-mile-an-hour speeds. But it has also been pointed out that, there has not been an accident situation at this intersection. And it is common practice in the city to allow parking up to 20 feet to the corners of intersections. So the current configuration is in conformance with city guidelines and ordinances for parking. And so it's really a decision of this committee. Do you want to, enforce the strict rules of sight distance, or do you want to allow parking, within 20 feet of an intersection as we normally do?
Thank you, Eric. Anybody from the committee?
Well, I was wondering if we can cut back 1 space instead of 3. I think the problem is that when there's a large vehicle or 2 large vehicles parked at that intersection, it's very hard to see left if you're coming out of Cass Street. So is there a compromise of eliminating?
I think Eric just came up with a compromise, which is, eliminate 2 versus 4.
2 versus 4. So one on one side?
No.
Tell me again.
This scenario here, you would still be reducing 2 spaces on this side.
Yeah.
But no spaces on this side.
Yeah, okay.
Rather than 3 on one side and 1 on the other side.
Right.
Is tree trimming that just gives open space lighting?
Yeah, the trees really aren't the issue. I mean, if you let them go another few years, then maybe it could become an issue. But right now, it's the parking that's the issue.
Yeah.
Any other, Erica?
I do think that the parking there, especially if someone's parked on that end spot, is a major problem for sight distance issues. And this is, we do have a lot of places in town where we park right up to 20 feet from a stop sign or the edge of an intersection. I think in most of those cases, the speeds are quite a bit lower. Those are mostly in neighborhoods. And this is a neighborhood, but this is also an important connector road in our town. So it has a little bit of a different feel. So I do think it's probably a good idea for us to eliminate at least 1 or 2 spaces on that one side of the intersection. I am, however, concerned that doing so might increase speeds or people swinging, cutting the corner. So I know people don't like these, but I really think we should put some plastic stanchions out to define the end of the parking area and where the where the intersection point is, so people aren't taking those turns at speed.
Okay. Mark?
I think it goes back to compromise, but also maximizing on safety, which is a hard balance. So instead of 3 and 1, I'd say just 1 and 0, and just revisit. I think there's definitely some painting, some signage can go in. So remove 1, signage, painting, and going through the arborist, the city public works, tree committee, maybe doing some kind of trimming, and then revisit it in 6 months to a year. But we just start slowly because of the level of sensitivity with parking. That's the compromise. So 1 and nothing, paint, signs, trimming, and then revisit 6 months to a year.
Any other comments?
That sounds reasonable.
I'm
sorry, I had to take a emergency call.
So I guess we have three options on the table: remove 4, which I don't think has any support, or remove 2, or remove 1.
Okay.
Erica, do you have a?
So what's the proposed option? Are you making a motion to?
I'll make a motion based on what I just said. Did he get that?
Motion to remove one space.
Yeah, one space, signage, painting, tree trimming, revisit 6 months.
Well, we can't do the tree trimming because that goes. To the
Okay, well,
committee,
we
but
have to.
we
well,
can suggest that.
We can suggest to go through the tree committee, arborist, public works.
If we're not removing, if it's just trimming trees.
Just trimming.
The arborist can take care of that stuff. If there are trees, if they're hanging over, blocking the ways, we can trim them. But we'd have to work with the private property owner. So you're talking about the branches that are hanging over the sidewalk?
The one on the
That's what I
site
would,
visit that
yes.
Mary Lou brought up.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can go ahead and talk to the arborist and see if we can get that done.
He might say
I don't
no.
think it's the issue. I mean, the issue's the cars.
Well, it's one of
And
them.
those are
It's one of
beautiful
them.
trees,
Yeah.
but it may be starting slow. We'll start with the
We'll
1.
just hear what the arborist has to say. If he says no, it's no.
And just a reminder for the public, this is a one-year trial. It has to be codified at the end of a year by the council. So this is not a permanent change until the council votes next year. You know, if they accept this at all this time, you know, they first have to accept it before it can be implemented. And then after a year of experience, they have to codify it at that time.
Any other thoughts or concerns on this?
What do other folks think about the idea of some sort of curve, edge defining, corner defining treatment, like a plastic stanchion? I know people don't like them, but
Is it the bollards you're referencing?
yeah,
Yeah, people don't like
No,
that.
don't- yeah.
flex post
All right. Oh,
delineators.
yeah, that's the word, yeah.
I at this point, I don't think it's.
I mean,
worth
it's not the right time in
episode.
this season, but maybe when
It's a-
they
it's
go
a-
back out in the spring.
I would say no. I would not be supportive of that.
I think Dave, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm just going to say that I would be in favor of a kind of an iterative approach on this, and that I would be in favor of the one space trial at this point.
Seems like we have
So
consensus.
I would modify it, just say that we'd have
One
the
and
traffic
none?
camera up and, be able to see if there's any change in, behavior or perceived risk.
I accept that. Part of my motion. You want a friendly amendment? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right. I think that's a reasonable compromise. I have received, since this came out in the packet, a number of residents have expressed concern about this intersection. But that being said, the data hasn't shown any accidents that we know of. But I do walk my dog there quite often, and there's a lot of near misses. And we always have that balance. Sometimes if there's near misses, it means people are paying more attention. So counterintuitively, it can be safer. But I think removing the one spot makes a lot of sense, because when there's a large truck park there, it is very challenging to see. So we'll take a roll call vote.
Can we get a second first?
Oh,
Second,
Mary Lou McElwain,
yes.
Mark Siragusa,
Yes.
Erica Wygonik,
Yes.
Peter Rice,
Yes.
Stephanie Casella,
Yes.
Dave Allen,
Yes.
Chairman Bagley.
yes. Okay. I've lost my spot on the agenda. Hancock Street at Washington Street, request for all-way stop by resident. This is the second site walk we took last week. And the sample motion is move to place on file.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Or Eric, do you have a?
Yeah, in the packet I provided, we did some other counts out there just to see what options would be. The sight lines are limited at the intersection, but speeds on Hancock Street were actually lower than the posted speed limit of 20. And so speeding is not an issue, it's just the concerns with the sight lines because of the house on the corner here and then the fence on this corner here. Two things that really aren't going to be able to be changed to improve the sight lines coming out of Washington Street. So we looked at making Washington Street possibly one way the other way, going down towards Pleasant, but the volume coming on Washington is mostly coming from Pleasant Street, so that would be really going against the existing traffic patterns in the neighborhood. It was kind of, we haven't seen much accident. We just had those 2 accidents in the summertime, but other than that, there's not been a lot of accident history at this location, so felt it. Maybe just keeping an eye on it going forward, see if it continues to be a concern, we can always readdress it, take another look at it.
Great, thank you. Any other discussion? Okay, could we please have a roll call vote, please?
Mary Lou McElwain,
Yes.
Mark Syracuse.
Yes.
Erica Wagonic.
Yes.
Peter Rice.
Yes.
Stephanie Casella.
Yes.
Dave Allen.
Yes.
Chairman Bagley.
Yes. Okay, informational items. We don't have the police here today, so we're going to, I guess, postpone until next month the item A, police monthly accident report.
Have the data, right?
We do have the graphs in the packet here.
So we have the data, but I guess we'll save questions until next month because I don't think any of us are ready to answer them.
No.
So skipping over that item, or we have B, City Road Construction Projects update.
Yes, so construction is continuing on a lot of major projects. Islington Street, the detour up at the Congress Street, and it will only be here a day or two here and there going forward, but it's mostly open. Islington is now restricted, one lane alternating for where the construction's going on, but not too much detours anymore. Bartlett Street will still have detours in place for another 4 to 5 weeks while that work finishes up. The Maplewood Ave Bridge still will be out at least until December as that work continues on the Maplewood Ave Bridge over the North Mill Pond. Union Street work is continuing through the end of the year. Willard Street work continuing. And Sagamore will be paved next week. So that's a major milestone on that project, Sagamore Ave.
Excellent.
And you can expect speeds to increase.
I noticed that we did put at Dave's recommendations, we put the little ramps there, and that's made driving Sagamore or riding on your bike a lot better.
Yes, they'll fill it. So that'll be all one level after next week.
Erica?
Eric, I know you just said this, but I was trying to write down all of the updates, and the Maplewood Bridge, when are you projecting that to go to?
That will reopen for the wintertime, looking at December at this point, barring any unforeseen challenges or problems that pop up. But the project itself will finish next year, but it'll reopen for the wintertime.
Is it going to close again in the spring?
Just one lane. It'll be one lane alternating.
Mary Lou?
How about State Street at Pleasant, when all of that destruction
Oh, yes.
finishes?
Yeah, once they finish clearing out the debris from the tear down, then we'll put that State Street back.
It'll open up again.
Yeah, get rid of the barricades, put the striping back to the way it
Good.
was.
Good.
That should happen either this week or next, but.
Okay. And we have item C, new state RSA on seasonal speed limits.
Yes, this was in the packet last month, but I forgot to mention it specifically. One of the two new state laws that was passed has to deal with how towns and cities can set speed limits on a seasonal basis. And it's in here, so if there's an engineering or traffic investigation that's been done, then the city or town can reduce the speed limit if that roadway is seasonally congested by pedestrian or bicycle traffic. Then the city can lower the speed limit to 20 miles, no less than 20 miles per hour, and no more than 4 months in any 12-month period. So you'd have to determine what roads are congested by bicycle or pedestrian traffic and where that would make sense. I think probably the downtown area would qualify, but it's already, the speed limit is posted at 15 downtown, so and I don't think speeding is an issue in the downtown area. But it is.
Is it enforceable, though, if it's dropped down to there? I mean, because
No,
currently
not this
25 is
It's a
the
state law, yeah.
state law.
But this will allow us to put it at 20, and it would be enforceable during 4 months of the year.
Okay.
I think the police have said in the past that speeding, they don't see speeding as an issue in the downtown area.
I think that's the one area of town we don't see it as an issue.
Yeah.
Okay. Item D, Coakley Connector public meeting.
So as I mentioned last month, the city has been awarded a grant from Federal Highway to remove the traffic signal on the bypass at the intersection of Coakley Road and Cottage Street. And we'll be having a public meeting, informational meeting with the neighborhood or anybody who's interested at the Senior Center on Tuesday, October 22nd at 6 p.m. And this will just be an introduction to the project and information for the public as to how this project will progress. So it'll be a removal of the signal on the bypass. We're also looking to build a connector road from Coakley Road to Borthwick Ave. and that allow left turns for the Coakley Road neighborhood to come out to Borthwick. And also, we've been awarded a grant for the Kate Street Bridge reconstruction on Kate Street between Hodgson Way and Cottage Street. So all those three projects are all interrelated and will be happening at the same time. And it's a major project to address traffic on the bypass and get neighborhood traffic off of Bartlett Street and onto Hodgson Way to the bypass where it belongs.
And the bypass is a state
road.
State road, so we have to coordinate with them.
Yes.
Any changes?
But they are supportive
Yes.
of the removal of that light, or the traffic signal. That is why they gave us the CMAQ grant.
Yes. Yeah, work. The state actually proposed the removal of that signal over 20 years ago, but they spent their time and efforts on repairing the bridges over the bypass in the past 20 years. This is a project that we can pick up and take.
All right, great. And then item E, the parking utilization study presentation.
So the presentation was given to the City Council on September 23rd, and the entire presentation, the PowerPoint slide, is provided in the packet for informational purposes for anybody who didn't catch it. I won't go through the whole presentation here, but it's available for anyone who wants to see it. A lot of good data in there from their study.
And the presentation is posted on the city's website.
Yes.
So the video
as well.
presentation.
It's about an hour long and a lot of good data.
Yes. So we're going forward, and that parking study will be approved by City Council coming up. Is that
We're going to be soliciting input from the general public until probably mid-November, and then it'll be proposed to put on an agenda for December 2nd, acceptance by council. But that is to be established with the mayor.
Okay. And then miscellaneous.
I just have a couple of things that have to do with intersections again. At Congress and Maplewood, can the timing of that no-turn right, be set up so that when you hit the crosswalk button, that warning sign goes on at the same time? I've crossed there, and I'm a third of the way across before that light comes on, and I've got a vehicle trying to turn right, Congress onto Maplewood. Is there any chance that timing, I've seen that comment also on Click and Fix?
Yeah, there is a sign that says no turn on red, so they're not supposed to be turning at all.
No, I'm talking about the new
one, yeah. it says
yield to
yep.
pedestrians.
Yeah. 'Cause
That's the new sign I'm
comes on when
referring
they
to.
get the green light.
What's that?
That comes on when the vehicles get the green light, that sign comes on.
Well, I'm wondering if it can be set up so that when you push the walk light.
Yes, it could be, but then you're sort of giving the message to the drivers that now it's safe to turn when they're not supposed to be turning at all on a red light. It's no turn on red there.
Well, I'm just saying that I have crossed. That light eventually comes on when I'm a third of the way across, and I've seen these comments on Click and Fix that it should be go on when you hit the walk light. Why wouldn't it?
Well, we can make this a
Immediately.
Because
future
it
agenda.
implies that it's a safe. If you're yielding, it means you're moving, and you're not supposed to move until
Do
the
not
light turns
yield.
green.
What? Come on. The whole setup
Mary Lou,
was for safety.
We've gone over this one a number of
I
times.
know.
We can put it back on the
I
agenda.
see comments on Click and Fix,
We don't
and I'm
need to
wondering
put
why
that
it
on
can't
the
be
agenda, Mr.
changed.
Chairman.
And you said you had another?
Yes, at the intersection of State and Middle, no turn on red. I've seen those comments on Click and Fix also. If that sign can be moved towards the street sign itself, so that it can be seen actually when the lights change.
You're talking about the blank out sign up top?
Yep, no turn on red.
Yeah, it says no turn on red when the pedestrian
Right.
comes on. If it can be moved down lower to where it's more visible.
Exactly.
All right. And anybody else with miscellaneous? So I've got one. I'd like to nominate Erica as vice chair now that Steve Pesci has stepped off the board. And,
Second.
any discussion? I think with Erica, with her PhD in traffic engineering, it's highly qualified. So
You accept it?
Sure.
Good for you. Good for you.
could we get a roll call vote on that?
Mary Lou McKelvin.
Yes.
Mark Siragusa. Erica Wagonik,
I'm going to abstain from that.
Director Peter Rice,
Yes.
Stephanie Casella,
Yes.
Dave Allen,
Yes.
Andrew Bagley.
Yes. Okay. Thank you, Portsmouth. That concludes this month's Parking, Traffic, and Safety meeting.